Good evening, YouTube, and welcome to YouthViewz. I am Harry Khan, back from the wilderness. It has been a few months, no doubt. I think it's fair to say, guys, that the election result had something to do with the sort of reluctance to come back. But we are back, and I always said to myself that I would start streaming again once the Labour leadership election had taken place. So that's me. We have a full house tonight, and as you can see on camera, we have our special guest, YouTuber and ex-parliamentary electoral candidate. I think that's fair to say. Accurate, Captain Swiss from Stoke-on-Trent. How are we doing, Swiss?
Not too bad. Been muddling my way through the lockdown, probably like a few other people.
And we'll definitely get into that. We'll definitely get into that later, yeah. And I like that groovy haircut of yours, Swiss. Is that anything in particular in terms of a name of a style? Mohican, I think, is usually the name, or
I think so. Yeah, I need to shave the rest of it again, to be honest, because it's starting to get a little bit. It's starting to look a bit pineapple-y. So I need to avoid that.
Let's see if you get a haircut in this day and age. A haircut will be a gift lately. Right, so Cooperman, well, now we've got you for about 15 minutes. Thanks for joining us. Long time no speak. How are we?
I'm fine. I was on Swiss's stream earlier, so I discussed quite a bit about what was going on and all that stuff.
Good stuff. So we'll definitely move to you first in a minute after I've introduced everyone. Cameron, from our friend from up north, how are we?
Hello, I'm doing good.
Oh, it's so lovely to hear your voice after all these months.
I think it's more lovely to hear your voice, to be honest.
Well, I'm flattered. Tom, I mean, what's a YouTube live stream without Tom?
Yeah, I'm all right, thanks. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm not too bad. I know we'll definitely talk about your depression with the outgoing of Jeremy Corbyn later on. I know it's hit you hard, and last, we wouldn't again have a stream without our guy Lucas Barner. How are we, mate?
It's great to be here. Great to be back. Unlike Swiss, I didn't get a haircut, so I think I'm going to be rocking a ponytail in a couple of weeks. But
I think we all will. And I want to thank all of our sort of live listeners as well today. Look, apologies for my rustiness, if there is any rustiness. I am getting back into this after being out of the groove for some months. So we are going to be doing a bit of good old winging at the same time as trying to entertain you in the world of politics today and try and making things as entertainment as possible. So let's get into our first subject, guys. I think it's fair to say that the buzzing news of the last day or so is the Labour leadership elections, and I don't think any of us on the stream here will be shocked to learn that Sir Kier, how dare I slap on the wrist for that, Sir Kier Starmer, the new Labour leader. The new leader of the Labour Party, rather, I should say. Cooper, because you've got to go in a little under 8 minutes. We haven't caught up. None of us have really spoken to each other over these last few months. So this is the great thing about today. I can get everybody's spontaneous views. Are you welcoming this new selection of the Labour membership?
Well, let's see. Funny enough, I got my membership card the same day as the leadership election. Granted, I might stay a bit longer, depending on, the people who I'm planning on talking to around 7 are going to be late. But at the moment, I'll let you know when I actually do leave. But at the moment, let's see. From what I can gather, this election result was inevitable. The only question was whether or not Keir Starmer was going to win on the first round or the second round, and clearly he's won on the first round, getting 56% of the vote. Let's see, which is not as high as a vote share as Corbyn's 59 in 2015 and 61 or 63, I think, in 2016. But either way, we've got a new leader. I think some are debating on whether or not Keir Starmer has a bigger mandate than Corbyn because I think more members have joined during his time period. But of course, this is mostly because, well, new election, new leader, time to decide who you want to change, how you want the party to go. But
did you say you joined the Labour Party then on the eve of obviously the election?
no, I didn't join. I've been a member since Easter. I've just got on my new membership card on the day.
Oh, I see. Sorry, apologies.
But
so who did you vote? I mean, you don't have to disclose, but I mean, did you vote for Keir Starmer as well? Or?
No, I voted Rebecca Long-Bailey. I told this on Swiss's stream. My reasoning was originally I was going to vote for her anyway, but then I moved to Lisa Nandy when it looked like, let's see, she wasn't going to beat Keir Starmer, and it looked like Lisa Nandy had a shot. Yeah, because I thought, okay, if the left isn't going to win, I figured Lisa Nandy was going to be the soft left. But then I think she did some comment, and it looks like she had understood some of the reasons why Labour lost some of those northern seats. So I figured, okay, we might need a northern MP to win back. But then apparently she wasn't really campaigning that much, and I think I saw some of the members in the Bullet Club mention how she doesn't support nationalisation or getting rid of the student debt thing. So it's clear to me that she looked like she wasn't going to be all that left wing. So I just moved back to Long Bailey, and I screw it. Keir Starmer's going to win anyway. Might as well just vote with my conscience.
Wow. Okay, so you swung then.
Yeah. So yeah, I swung and then swung back. But honestly, I kind of wish Clive Lewis got onto the ballot just because I feel like he was the one with the more interesting new ideas, and left wing enough, not to mention, didn't seem to have the same baggage as Rebecca Long-Bailey did.
Okay. So you voted for Rebecca Long-Bailey. Are you disappointed then, Cooper?
Well, to be honest, I expected it. To be honest, I'm not really that disappointed. So it's not like it was a neck-and-neck race. And to be honest, I found this leadership election to be a bit dull. I mean, say what you want about Corbyn, at least back when he was being elected as leader, it was exciting. It was interesting.
Oh, it was better than EastEnders. Not that I watch EastEnders, but it was definitely exciting, wasn't it? The last, not the last one, but the last two, if you remember.
Oh yeah, you had the establishment of Labour losing their minds.
You had the stabbings in the backs, didn't you, back then?
Oh yeah. Well, now we end up getting. Well, anyway, we've got a taste of what they got a taste in 2015.
So you were expecting it, Cooper, but I mean, you haven't answered. Were you disappointed though? Okay, you were expecting it, but were you pleasantly sort of happy with? Are you happy with some potential stability now, or what?
Well, not at the moment. I suppose at the moment it really depends on what Keir Starmer does as leader. So far, one cabinet announcement I'm not happy about, which is Rachel Reeves. But then again, at least she's not Shadow Chancellor, the main one at least.
There's a few people talking about Rachel Reeves, and Guy, I know you were talking to me earlier about you were actually keeping a close eye on the shadow cabinet announcements. I don't believe it's fully been announced at this moment, but Rachel Reeves is certainly a name that's popped up. There's obviously Aaron Bastani on Twitter has been talking as well about some names. I think you'll come up on my screen in a second, but the shadow chancellor, because that's always a big announcement, isn't it, Guy?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of the key ones have come in. With the shadow chancellor, Annalise Dodds, I think is a brilliant appointment, especially for the left, but it's also a compromise because she wasn't really someone who's kind of a polarizing figure. She didn't really stick her cards to anyone. She is quite good for unity. And I heard her speak at a women's equality seminar at conference about egalitarian economics. She's worked so closely with John McDonnell as the shadow treasury minister under Corbyn. I think her in the Chancellor Department is a win for the left. And if it's not an indication by Starmer that he's going to kind of respect the people on the left of the party, I think that's quite a promising move. But yes, Rachel Reeves is not a great move for Corbyn, like myself. Obviously, she spent a lot of time undermining Jeremy, his leadership. She's got some very sceptical views on the benefit system and kind of how we treat working class people. But I suppose with unity comes compromise. The right are going to have some people in there. The left are going to have some people in there. So long as people come together at the end of the day, I think we're going to have to accept that there's going to be people that we don't like.
Yeah, no, that's a fair comment, and I think it's a very compromising comment, and I think that's probably where a lot of the membership have probably voted for Sir Kier Starmer, because they do probably see a look at the last few years of infighting. Although I think Labour's policy area has been sort of well received by general public and membership. I think the reasons for many Labour Party voters in this election has been unity. So I think I'm certainly hearing a sense of compromise in your voice. But yesterday, Captain Swiss, I know you're very well tuned in to the world of Twitter and social media. There was a lot of stabbing from the so-called centrists stroke, what do they call them, non-Corbynites in the party. That almost this kind of, oh gosh, we're so glad we're out of this trap now. Oh, thank goodness the chains of Corbyn we are free from. Now that was a little bit controversial, wasn't it?
I mean, it certainly goes to show that the divisions that there have been in the Labour Party for the last few years haven't necessarily gone away overnight. And I think John Cooper had said towards the beginning of the stream, it's almost like a reverse 2015 moment for some people. That, 2015, Corbyn came along, the left took over the party, and now Corbyn's out. Starmer, we'll see how things pan out, but for the time being, let's call it a soft left centre of gravity, maybe something like that. But yeah, certainly I'd imagine as far as the centrists, the so-called Blairites go, they're going, hurrah, finally, But that said, I wouldn't expect the policy shift that we've seen under Corbyn over the last 5 years to suddenly fizzle away overnight. I don't think it's going to continue under the exact same socialist trajectory that it had been under, but certainly I think, some key areas, probably even some nationalisation for that matter as well, is likely to endure into this new Starmer era.
Yeah. No, that's reasonable, and if he is true to his words, Sir Kier Starmer, when he says, "I want to unite the party," then a purge on the left of the party would certainly not be on the cards. You would think that if there was going to be a shift in ideology, it would be taking months, if not years, before that sort of takes place. But I mean, Tom, I want to bring you in at this point, because a lot of the time, a lot of people talk about sort of Boris Johnson being a people's person, and a lot of the focus on this leadership in terms of the opposition, the main opposition to Boris Johnson, was not necessarily going to be too much about policy. If we look at the recent general election, the argument wasn't really mainly on policy and economics. It was really all about Brexit, which obviously we found and we debated about a lot during the election. A lot of people are talking about Keir Starmer being the right man, certainly the right face, the person that I think Corbyn had been accused of not looking prime ministerial, not looking like that person that could run the country. Are you feeling, Tom, that Sir Kier Starmer could be that guy?
Yeah, I think about Starmer, he's probably the right man, as you say. He'll be good for the Parliamentary Labour Party, no doubt. If anything, this recent election has shown us that manifestos, policies, and are irrelevant. We live in an age of populism and identity politics. You look at the smears against Corbyn; it was all personal. For example, it never he's unfit to be prime minister. You've heard it all. But the idea is, it's all about him. It's an identity. It's about appearance. Yes. And Starmer, he's quite pristine in his appearance. He's got the working class background, but he's not the loony leftist communist. He's worked his way up to one of the highest points in the judicial system. He's a sir, but yet he's well respected within the within some parts of the left wing of the Labour Party. So he'll do a good job at appealing to lots of Midlands voters, more middle class voters, of which Corbyn totally alienated. And that's the thing about Starmer. Is my point here is that it's great and all saying, we're going to win back the North, but even with the North, we still didn't have a majority. We really need to start targeting new areas of the UK, and this is why Long Bailey and Nandy wouldn't be so ideal in the sense that places in the Midlands, we banged on about poverty throughout the election, which is absolutely rife throughout cities. But in these Tory areas in the Midlands and whatnot, often shielded from the poverty you see in day-to-day cities, it's just not effective because you just don't see it. Because it is not on your doorstep. It's not that you don't believe poverty is real. It's just not very effective because you can't see it. It's not in front of you. And I thought that was an issue with our entire campaign. All people in the Midlands saw was Corbyn wanting to tax them more to help the people they've never seen in their lives. So I think Starmer will do a far better job at targeting these.
And he wasn't Tom. He wasn't giving them the Brexit that they voted for in 2016. I think that was a large part of it. But Cameron, I've just heard you come in, and actually, as soon as Tom said that about the red wall and losing our northern seats, I straight away I thought, you know what, Cameron's going to talk about this, because I've been following you a little bit on Twitter as well, Cameron. I think it's fair to say that you don't think that Keir Starmer is going to revive Labour.
I think they're going to stagnate, basically. In terms of poverty in the Midlands, there's a lot of it, and the reason why people voted the way they did is because of poverty. The idea that people don't see it's nonsense. It's one of the reasons why they've got to leave in those parts of the country. I think the issue of Keir Starmer is that he's very uninspiring.
Yeah.
Corbyn inspired people. Keir Starmer is quite dull. And I think with background, I don't think background is going to mean anything at all. You've already seen the same people speak Corbyn to death, saying Keir Starmer protected Jimmy Savile. That's just me that came out today. It's actually going to face a lot of the same problems as Corbyn.
Sorry, I missed that last bit because the sound is not great on your side, Cameron. So what was that? I missed that last sentence.
It's going to face a lot of the same problems that Corbyn faced. People will talk about Corbyn being smeared. It's already happening with Keir Starmer. People are saying today that Keir Starmer protected Jimmy Savile in 2009 as the head of the prosecution service.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I still didn't hear that, Cam. So something about Jimmy Savile. Did anyone catch it?
Yeah, he said Jimmy Savile.
There was a headline today saying that. Oh no, go on. If he's explained.
It's a bunch of news stories come out today claiming that as the head of the prosecution service, he let Jimmy Savile get away with sexual abuse allegations. There's things like that that's coming out. That's going to hit Keir Starmer, like stories about anti-Semitism hit Jeremy Corbyn, or stories about his links to the IRA, Hezbollah, and all of that.
All that previous stuff, yeah.
So the idea that Starmer's indifferent is that's just no.
Yeah. So you don't think as a northern voter as you are, one of the red wall voters, you don't think that Keir Starmer will revive and turn those heads away from the Tories. I mean, obviously, look, we know anything can happen. I mean, we'll talk about this in a few minutes in terms of the crisis that we're undergoing at the moment and the government's handling. If there's anything that will teach us is that anything can happen in politics. But as a person, Tom had a really sort of reasonable view a few minutes ago in terms of we needed to pick up pockets of communities in terms of voting that will help bring us back into government. But actually, your point, Cam, seems to be that there's a number of headlines attached to Keir Starmer in terms of his past, in terms of his personality and his presentation, and the fact that he's a knighted individual, Sir Kier Starmer, and we joked about it earlier in the stream. But, these are the kind of things. But what I would then say to you, Cam, in response of that is, did they not elect a posh man in as Prime Minister at this moment in time? Is he, just taking Tom's point about personalities and looking presidential, looking prime ministerial, isn't that what the aim of the game is, Cam?
I don't think Boris Johnson looked Prime Minister in a traditional sense. I know a lot of people say that about Keir Starmer, but I don't think that's enough to defeat Boris Johnson.
No, I think that's...
To be fair on Keir, right? He's probably, I know a lot of people don't like it, but he's probably going to unite the Labour Party inside. A lot of people that left the Labour Party who were out of touch with Corbyn on issues like his failed to deal with anti-Semitism. That's one big example of it. And I think he can make the Labour Party one united force. I think and that may help him.
Yeah.
But it's going to be a very, very steep mountain for him to make any inroads. Unless the Tories absolutely mess up, let's say, the current crisis.
No, that's a fair point. I know you've been trying to come in, Cooper. You're still with us, aren't you, by the looks of it?
Yeah, at the moment, I'm still with you. I think I was just...
Are you disagreeing here?
I'm sorry, what?
Are you disagreeing with Cam?
No, I'm not really disagreeing. I believe I was going to try and make a comment on something he said. I'm trying to recall what it was. I think it was like the Sun I think it was the Sun Millionaire. And I remember. It was a tweet from Lewis Goodwell. Apparently he tweeted about a Labour MP texting about how this MP was excited that in the first time in 10 years.
Oh, yeah. I saw that.
Prime Minister, and even looks more of a Prime Minister than the current one, which was, to be honest, cringy. But you pretty much have an MP. So some MP is not only taking a jab at Corbyn for being for looking like a geography teacher, you had someone taking a jab at Ed Miliband as well. So, some of those MPs, you got some of those MPs who despise both Miliband and Corbyn. Now, happy that Starmer is now in charge, so there's something like that. But granted,
okay,
we were going to put those are the leaders that lost Scotland and the North. So
Swiss, I'm going to, at this point, just go off camera for a few minutes. I'm going to hand over to you. Sorry to put you on the spot in terms of, I'm going to let you decide on the subject in terms of hosting the continuation of the conversation. I mean, what I was going to sort of mention is that obviously, I know you've just streamed about Sir Kier Starmer in your previous stream. Maybe a discussion on the shadow cabinet. I know it was mentioned earlier a little bit by Guy, but I'm going to just go off camera for a few minutes, and then I've got a little thing to do, and I'll hand over to you if that's okay.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Thank you.
All right then. I guess I'll just quickly add a comment to what's been said already. Then, just on Keir Starmer and like his presentation as well, because I think the point was made about here he is sort of versus Boris. Obviously, Boris quite obviously being a toff. Why is it that Keir would get criticism for being a millionaire or seemingly fairly posh, but Boris seems to get a free pass and he's the prime minister? I think maybe the slight difference is Boris has always kind of adopted that into his character, hasn't he? He's always traded off the fact that he's a little bit bumbling and he's obviously upper class, but kind of unlike, if you remember, like with David Cameron, David always tried to shy away from it. I mean, he said, "Call me Dave." He was very much doing his very best to bring himself back down to the regular people out there. But Boris has always just kind of gone, "Nope, that's me. I'm I am who I am. Aren't I funny?" And I think maybe the reason that might be a slight problem generally for politicians on the left and left-wing parties is if the main point of criticism quite often is towards people in a position of wealth, or to say you're disconnected from the working class we seek to represent, etc., it becomes a slightly more stinging thing when it's used back on their own side, just because usually that's one of the tools they use to criticise the other side. I don't know if anyone wants to respond to that or not, but that's just kind of the observation I've made on it.
Well, there's two things I just want to poke on. It's like Karen has a fair point in saying that Keir Starmer is not immune to the media. I'm sure they'll have no trouble pulling something out their arse, like today's accusation. against Keir Starmer, no doubt. However, the thing about Jeremy Corbyn was that we've got a lifelong politician here, well known for campaigning for very left-wing causes. He had talked to the IRA. He had talked to what are they called in Yemen? But you get the point. He has
You mean
negotiated
Hamas?
with these people. Yeah, that's the one. Sorry, yeah. He has negotiated with these people. He's got this pass. So the smears that they came up with were a lot more believable. And Corbyn's appearance overall, it seems it's more believable when you look at him. In the sense that where Keir Starmer, you've got this well-respectable man. If they would start to throw all these accusations at him, it's not as easy to believe as it would have been with Corbyn, which is the media will have a harder time smearing Keir Starmer as they did Jeremy. And of course, like today's accusation, I'm not sure how many people will believe that. You look at Keir Starmer, and I think it doesn't take an idiot to know that as heads of the prosecution service, he doesn't micromanage every single case. But also, I just like to add on what you're saying now, with Keir Starmer looking all posh. I think with Boris, it's kind of ironic, really. He may be this upper-class bigot, but one of the main aspects of his campaign was he was portraying himself as anti-establishment. He was sticking it to the man, wasn't he? Like, Parliament is trying to stop Brexit. I'll shut it down. Or people in my own party are trying to stop me. Well, I'll kick them out. And this is this entire campaign he's taken so far. The European Union are the big establishment bad guys, and he's sticking it to them. He's standing up for the average person, and that's probably one of the aspects of how he won the election. So it doesn't look good having a Sir as leader of the Labour Party, considering Labour's roots. However, we have to take into account that he had this title for his work in human rights, and he has come from a working class background. Well, wasn't his mother a nurse and his father a cobbler? I mean, he's worked his way up, sure, but this is the point. He may be a Sir, but he's not as upper class as the likes of Boris. So, sorry, yeah, no, I'm done. That's all I want to say.
To be honest, I think you're not going to get people caring about that. I mean, some people don't even actually care why Corbyn went and talked to these groups of people and stuff. But yeah, so honestly, I'm pretty certain you're going to have some people, regardless of how good Keir Starmer presents themselves, not going to vote for him just because the fact that he's got the title Sir, he's a Ritzy and stuff like that. Oh, and the fact that he did Ritzy. One thing that's going to probably come back to bite him in the northern seats, the particular ones with the die-hard Leave areas, is that he was the Brexit secretary under the Labour time when we were trying to leave the EU and pushing the second referendum. So you're going to have people, regardless of how good or bad Keir Starmer is, that it's not going to vote for him. Not to mention, not to mention before, I did some local canvassing for Labour before the general election. Before the local elections were delayed for a year. I did have a few people knocking the door saying how they're never voting Labour again, even though Corbyn is going. So yeah, he also has to deal with that.
But I suppose the issue with that is who's going to remember all of that, in the sense that, from what I found, nobody had a foggiest of who Keir Starmer is. They know Labour wasn't supporting the Brexit they wanted, but they didn't know who was responsible for the policy.
The newspapers will probably point that out if they think
Brexit
it can damage Keir Starmer.
We haven't seen Brexit on the news for months. It's basically, as far as people are concerned.
Well, that's because of the virus, but for all we know, once this Ritzy virus goes and we go back to leaving the EU, let's see, they might try and do that in case. But and there's also the fact that one of Keir Starmer's 10 pledges is to try and keep a free movement thing, and if the media think that can damage him among the more Leave voting area seats, they will do that.
I think that's. Oh, sorry, Guy. Go on. You go.
Just something Tom said earlier about Corbyn. I think the reason it was so easy to smear him is because he never had ambitions to be a leader. Wasn't a careerist politician, so he was never really careful in the past. Oh, what will this look like in 20 years if I meet this person, if I support this cause or say this thing? Whereas with Keir Starmer, I think he has been careful. Of course, as head of public prosecutions, they're going to be able to spin things one way or another. He will have made decisions. I mean, being a politician on the left, no one's immune to that kind of criticism. And what Cameron said about the North as well, of course, his insight's the most valuable here, actually living there. But as someone kind of looking at it from the outside, I don't think we've lost the Red Wall permanently. I think Brexit was the issue. Working class communities up there who felt that we'd abandoned them for not wholeheartedly backing Leave decided to go to the Brexit party, some to the Tories, and that put them ahead in a lot of areas. And I think we're more than capable of winning back those areas if we can build a work of trust with them.
Well, some of them I think we're capable of winning it back, but I think there are some that have got now Tory majorities of 10,000, some even 17,000. Those ones we're not going to win back anytime soon.
Right, Bassett, right. Can I use one example of this? Right, Bassett law was never conservative. It went now it's got a conservative majority of 17,000.
It's quite big, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not right. Brexit was the main issue, but it's not just that. There's massive social issues as well you have to tackle. This is why Kier Starmer would have to try to do something to re-engage these communities. And he has to completely approach anything that has done.
I mean, the North hasn't suddenly all turned right wing. I accept your point.
It's not right wing as you think. Right, it's right wing. It's more social conservative and more long-term people. That's what, and that's something that not many people understand.
I think what you've got is a whole network, millions of working class voters who felt betrayed on the issue of Brexit. And I think after 4 years or so, at the next election, if it isn't on the agenda and isn't on the table, and we can present a strong left-wing manifesto, those policies were supported by the general public, but we weren't trusted on leadership, we weren't trusted on Brexit. We fix those issues, deliver that left-wing platform in 4 years, and we will win back those communities.
I think... Go on, Cam.
I honestly don't think it's going to be as easy as that. Labour have to see it, they'll oppose those communities. There's no point in presenting policies without when you just completely out of touch with the electorate there. If Labour doesn't understand the social issues in those areas, they will struggle to win them back.
Completely agree.
If I could make a point just on I was just going to speak about the fallout from Brexit in a way. It was said a little bit earlier, obviously, coronavirus has happened, and that's going to dominate the news for some time. The issue of whether or not we leave the EU, that's been resolved at this point. But obviously, once we return back to political normality, there's still going to be the conditions under which we leave the EU, because we're still in the transition period, what the future relationship is going to be with them. And obviously at that point in time, it will still be for the Labour Party in opposition to make their own arguments about, trying to push for single market membership or freedom of movement or what have you. Obviously, it's tricky for them to have much influence from the opposition benches, but they'll still make the case. So I think, yes, the issue of Brexit and how Labour approached Brexit is no longer a thing, but I don't think that issue itself is going to disappear entirely. So for any voters out there who may, people like myself, if I'll be completely frank, who did end up grading Labour on where they stood on Brexit, there's still more to be measured in the next few years on that. And I do, I mean, personally at least, I'm willing to give Kier Starmer a chance here and see what he ends up doing with the party and how it goes and how they present themselves and whether or not they're able to connect with the public better or not. But I think probably a hard red line for me personally would be if Labour ended up moving to some kind of a campaign to rejoin the EU position. Now, I don't think that's awfully too likely. It seems much more like a sort of thing that the Liberal Democrats would end up doing. But I do think that is something to be aware of, that the Brexit fox hasn't entirely been shot yet. It's still out there and it can still affect the outcome of things.
Yeah, I completely agree on that. But I think the difference now is because we're talking about a future relationship, it's not as polarizing. With Brexit itself, that it was a kind of a binary choice. You're out or you're in. And of course, Labour tried to put a compromise across and that wasn't listened to. And not enough people chose that. But now we've got future relationship. We're probably going to be able to carve some sort of future plan on both sides, because I think we tried to do that with Brexit when it was so binary and polarized. But now that we've got a bit more of an open scope, potentially we've got the ability to maybe reach out to both sides and see if we can do it properly this time.
I mean, Go on, Tom.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna just say, you're right. We're in the transitional period at the moment, and we're going to be negotiating a trade deal. Well, not necessarily a trade deal, but our future relationship with the European Union. However, the average voter, from what I've seen, doesn't even recognise we're in a transitional period. As far as they're concerned, we're out of the EU, and it'll still be on the news, sure. But the point, however, is that we only had a year to negotiate in this transitional period. It'll likely be extended because of the coronavirus.
Yeah.
But Boris has got a majority to last him an entire term. So, sure, this could be over. We could have perhaps another year of these negotiations now. Then we'll have another 3, maybe 4 years of Brexit done and dusted. It's been swept under the carpet then for 4 years. By the time the next election comes around, I don't think it'll be on anybody's minds or be that fresh in their memory to make such a influential impact on the outcome of the election. And sure, Cam is spot on in saying we can't be too blasé about the North. We're not just going to win them back overnight. I think, sure, they would disconnect. I don't think they found a new home in the Tory party. I don't believe that. I think they're very disconnected from the Labour Party, sure. And from what Cam has told me, it seems to be mostly from our rampant social libertarianism and our pro-immigration stance, which is in direct contrast to the more social conservatism sentiment up there. And I suppose that's going to be always an issue for the Labour Party, because a lot of Labour voters in the South are the complete opposite, of course. They would be appalled by any social conservative adoptions in policy. But the issue with the North is we're like, we need to win back the North. We need to win back the North. Eventually, I think we're almost guaranteed we'll get back the North. But even with the North, we still don't have a majority. Unless we broaden our horizons and target new areas, we're going to be in opposition for life. And this is obviously the issue. And we talk about, the people in the North supported our economic policies. I doubt that. Who supported our economic policies? Who reads the manifesto apart from the likes of us? And we're a minority. And this is the issue. Never once, I've knocked hundreds of doors during this election, never once had anybody ever questioned about a single policy. It was all about Jeremy Corbyn, how he looked, how he presented himself. And this is why probably Keir Starmer is likely to be good for winning an election. And I don't think this Brexit smear on him is going to be relevant come the next election at all.
Well, you say that,
on how he presents himself. If he goes out of his way to go for freedom of movement and take a really soft Brexit approach in these coming negotiations, that'll be a massive shot in the foot. He needs to recognise there's nothing he can do and just give it up and just, be opposition, but don't try too hard.
I'd agree. If I can make this point quickly, I'd agree with you on the Brexit front. The best thing that Keir Starmer can do is just to try and strike a tone of conciliation. Obviously, within Labour during the last Parliament, he was one of those. Well, he was in charge of the Brexit policy, but he was one of those pushing for the second referendum, which did alienate quite a few Brexit voters. But you're right. If he can just, Labour's got to put their own spin on it. They've got to give their own ideas about what relationship they want with Europe. But if at the very least the baseline of the thing is to say, okay, we've left and we've accepted that plus Starmer not being Corbyn probably ought to mitigate some things. I'd certainly say that Starmer not being Corbyn is more of an advantage to him over the average voter than the detriment of him having been responsible for the Brexit policy. So you've got a point there. I'm still on the side of Cameron, at least, where I'd say that, yes, is there scope for Labour to win back places in the North and the Midlands? Absolutely. Whether that can be done instantaneously by the time of the next election, as much as it needs to be done, or whether it will take the one afterwards, that's probably the more important question. But of course, the other point as well was the one that you made, Guy, about the need for looking at other places to win seats also. Because obviously it is a bit limited, isn't it? Especially with the SNP continuing to dominate in Scotland, which is where Labour used to get a lot of its seats from. It's a much, much slimmer choice where in England and Wales it pulls its MPs from, isn't it?
Never mind. That's where I was going to get to my point. Let's see. Another thing I would say, even though some people think that the issue of Brexit might be over and people might hold less of a grudge, you still have former Scottish voters that still just cannot forgive Labour for teaming up with the Tories during the Ritzy No campaign and some of the other stuff they've done for the last 10 years. I mean, you still got, heck, you even got an R wing of the party still not forgiving Tony Blair for Iraq. So grudges do tend to last longer than people think. And it seems that for like long-time voters, even just voting once the other way is enough to just shift in that way. Another thing, and this is going to be an issue for Kier, is, but see, and this is going to be an issue regardless of Labour, is that the fact that the SNP, since the SNP are dominating in Scotland, making it very hard to Labour have a majority without them, and this has worked for the last few elections, is that the Tories are going to constantly you vote Labour in, and they're going to go and do a coalition with the nationalists in Scotland. And even though English nationalists and Brexiteers, even though you could say English is a bit nationalist itself when it comes to Brexit, they still hate Scottish nationalists. A lot more. So they might not like the idea of a Labour/SNP coalition breaking up the United Kingdom's unity. Mm-hmm. So you got that issue to deal with.
I'm mindful, by the way, of the fact that we were asked if we'd start discussing the shadow cabinet appointments as well.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you guys have been keeping an eye on it this evening on Twitter, the same as I have.
Yeah.
What do you make of what you've seen so far?
Okay, let me just get up. Let me just find Owen Jones's tweet about it, because I believe he has a list. Let's see.
It's only like 6 or 7 of them announced so far, isn't it?
It's the top job so far, as far as I'm aware. Yeah.
Which is usually the ones that are most important. But let me just. Okay, from what let's see, you got Keir Starmer, leader of the opposition, and Angela Rayner as the deputy leader and chair of the Labour Party. That's pretty obvious.
Yeah.
From what it seems, we got Anisia Dodds as Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequers, which most people are fine with. You have Lisa Nandy as Shadow Foreign Secretary, Nick Thomas as Shadow Home Secretary, and you have Rachel Reeves as Shadow Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster. I'm not sure what that position is. And so far, the only person to keep his position the same is Jonathan Ashworth, Shadow Tech Secretary of State and Health and Social Care, though that's probably most likely due to the virus. So he'd be a bit more experienced in the current situation.
Now, there's a few names there that I wasn't awfully aware of beforehand, but I guess to start off with the ones that I was. Jonathan Ashworth staying in health. I suppose that makes a fair bit of sense given the present coronavirus. You want someone who's been experienced in that brief for some time already. You don't want to suddenly have to change that over right in the middle of all this. And obviously Ashworth worked with Corbyn for a number of years. So that'll be at least one person people can point to go, right, that's an ally of sorts who's staying in place.
Granted, I think Ashworth criticised Corbyn at some point during the election or afterwards, but who knows?
I think probably nearly all the MPs have criticised Corbyn at some point or another.
There was some sort of where John Ashworth made some sort of joke about Corbyn being a weak leader, but I mean, he served under Blair and Corbyn, and that's the kind of unity people that you need to be bringing in. So I think it's good to keep him around, especially now we've got a kind of a health crisis in this country. As you said, Swiss, changing the brief now would be a bit ridiculous. But I do think after seeing the skills of Rosina Allen Khan, maybe she could be lined up for a job in that department, potentially the ministerial position in the future. Someone who worked at the NHS can give so much more of an insight into the role, and I think it would increase the scrutiny powers to have someone on the inside. But even if she's part of the team alongside him, that would be brilliant.
And what do you guys make of the? I mean, obviously, it is only the top jobs we've had so far, so we've got a little bit further to go. But as far as the overall composition's looking, I'd say it's obviously there's less Corbynites in the top jobs than there were before, but that's probably to be expected. Corbyn's not leader, and Rebecca Long-Bailey didn't win the leadership contest, so that was always going to be the way of it. But it does seem to me that there's a sense, at least, that you're getting a bit of a diversity of political backgrounds there, aren't you? But probably with an averaging out of a sort of a soft left base.
The only one I have not really heard about is Nick Thomas Simjims as the Shadow Home Secretary. The only one of these positions I'm not really happy about is Rachel Reeves, given she was one of the biggest Corbyn skeptics. and also the fact that she said she would be tough. Once said we would be tougher on the welfare than the Tories. I think back in 2013, which I think Ritzy Cameron has quite frequently criticised her for. Let's see, is that Cameron?
Yes.
Let's see. I believe you've criticised her for that, for like welfare and all that stuff. So yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see. As for Lisa Nandy, well, I have no idea. Let's see what her foreign policy is, though she is apparently friends of Palestine. So, for those that are wondering if, so it's possible that Labour might still try to recognise the state of Palestine. Let's see, during the Corbyn and Miliband years. So who knows? We're not sure about that. But then again, it might be Labour's best interest to try and stay away from the whole Israel/Palestine versus Palestine conflict, since that's like a whole load of bubble for like anti-Semitism. So yeah.
I think so far, kind of looking at the kind of a rounded approach, I think you've got John Ashworth as kind of a unity candidate. You've got Annalise Dodds, who was Shadow Treasury Minister under Corbyn, an apprentice under John McDonnell, so probably a victory for the left. Emily Thornberry is apparently going to be given a position. You've got the likes of Lisa Nandy as a Foreign Secretary. I think both Thornberry and Nandy are formidable at the dispatch box. I think they'll be able to take on their counterpart. They'll be able to scrutinise. And also, I think with Nandy, as Cooper mentioned, she's a chair of the Labour Friends of Palestine. And I already know Keir Starmer has completely supported an independent state of Palestine alongside a safe and secure state of Israel. And the middle way approach on that issue is what we need to take. So it's good to have her in such a significant role. Yes, Rachel Reeves is a loss for the left. It's, you know, her views on benefits in the past about being tough stories on it. Her views on Corbyn for the last 5 years, undermining him. Of course, the left aren't going to be happy, but as I said earlier, with unity comes compromise. There'll be people on the left not happy with some appointments, people on the right not happy with some appointments. But, you know, this isn't Corbyn anymore. We can't just expect everyone we'd love in all of the positions. There's got to be a balance on both sides. And I think so far he is striking quite a good balance.
I think that's a very important point. That's a very important point, by the way. I've seen two different kinds of responses from different kinds of Corbyn supporters. There's been one camp of people who say, okay, well, we sit on the left of the party. Obviously, we prefer not to see people like Reeves or others who end up in these positions. But yes, you know, it's branching out. It's having representation from different wings. Like you say, unity requires compromise. The other take that I've seen, especially on Twitter in the last day or so, is sort of an instantaneous turn to go, aha, right, this is it. Keir Starmer, absolute Blairite, red Tory, etc., etc. Which I think, you know, there's certainly always going to be some people out there who are really not pleased, but I think there does have to be a degree of acceptance at this point that Corbyn's not in charge of the party anymore, and the membership did not vote for the Corbyn continuity candidate either. So, of course, there's going to be some kind of a change from the status quo, isn't there?
Well, granted, there'll be probably some, let's see, granted whether or not there'll be some members that, it's PLP, that some of the members will not tolerate regardless. I mean, Rachel Reeves, really, if she's going to be like what she is on the benefits, I think you're going to get a lot of, on the welfare like 5 years ago, you're going to probably get a lot of people not happy about that. Though, granted, if you got someone like Margaret Hodge, let's see, that might probably cause a bit of ire because she was one of the biggest Corbyn critics. So you're going to have, like, in many ways, one of the biggest troublemakers for Lisa Corbyn. That might make some people not happy. Others might be, granted, one thing I was, let's see, maybe Hillary Benn, partly because of, like, the fact that he kind of started the coup, one of the main MPs to start the coup behind him. But granted, one thing about Lisa Nandy, I suppose, is, let's see, at the moment, it doesn't look like she's one of those Labour MPs that are very pro-Iraq, so there's the plus on that, since a lot of Labour members don't like the Iraq war. In fact, it's the reason why half of them hate Tony Blair at this point, but yeah.
Sorry, just say, like, so far, what we've had had about the shadow cabinet. I'm not really surprised. It was expected that there wouldn't be many, if any, Corbynites left. I'm pleased about Chancellor and I'm pleased about Healthminster. The rest I can quietly accept, I suppose, the same position as Guy there. However, I find the slight issue that we say with unity comes compromise, but are we really going to pretend this is the first time that we've ever gone through this period of granting concessions and compromising to unite the party? Labour have done this 3 times throughout history. We do it all the time. It's like we go through a cycle every time. And I suppose an issue that we've since Blair, like we all know what Blair did to the party. The membership had no control. He would have cabinet meetings on the sofa with Brown. He was like supreme leader of the party. There's many positions, and you could almost argue there's very bureaucratic positions within the Labour Party. You have lots of influence, but the membership have no control over their position. So, and this is an issue Jeremy Corbyn faced in the sense that the party cannot be united unless every aspect of the established party and the parliamentary party is elected by the very same membership that elected the leadership. Otherwise, you're going to have active parties and pressure groups within a party, all with their own agenda, each undermining the leadership and influencing events against the will of the membership. So what my argument is, why I ended up voting for Long Bailey in the end, is unless these people can be removed from power, then we cannot have a truly united party. Like, why on earth would the right compromise if they've got an uncontested foothold within the party? They've got the leverage. Why would they compromise? We've got this appearance of being a broad church, but let's be honest, we're probably going to see the left only have junior positions within the cabinet. We haven't had hardly any of the rest of the shadow cabinet yet. And this is inherently an issue because of what Blair did to the party. We've got so many active groups with their fingers in Starmer's campaign, for example. We've got very right-leaning pressure groups within the Labour Party, like Blue Labour, for example. And you look at all of the sections of the party which back Starmer, they're very right-wing. And he's not necessarily right-wing, sure, but he hasn't proven himself to be the strongest of leaders. He doesn't seem to have lots of willpower. But this is the thing where I'm getting at here is with Starmer in power, if he doesn't take a hard stance like Corbyn did against the right in the party, he can be easily pushed and influenced in a way which could easily alienate the left. And this is why I thought Corbyn's work in democratising the party and Long Bailey's promises were so crucial if we were ever going to be united as a party again. Because the things like the anti-Semitism row, we had the MPs storming and undermining the party and the leadership and stopping our chance of election. That is no way to get elected. That's an awful party system we've got in place. So the party cannot be united unless these MPs have got the threat of deselection if they do not follow the whip, if they do not follow the rules of what the membership have put in place. Because it's great in all being in power and getting in government, but an issue Corbyn may have faced is unless all of his MPs backed him, they may not have voted with him and the whip had he chose to nationalise this or nationalise that. And if he hasn't got his positions on his side, he would never be able to do anything in power. And I'm not saying Starmer will face that issue because I don't think he would take the same stance as Corbyn, and he will over time be pushed further right. Not even Blair was a Blairite when he came in power in 97? But I think this is the danger, I suppose, with Starmer and the threat he possesses. He's the right man at the wrong time, really. If Long Bailey had a time to finish what Corbyn started, perhaps he would be ideal. But I think this is the issue with the shadow cabinet at the moment. That we're saying that it's going to be a broad church. You're going to have a bit of the left, a bit of right. I think the bit of the left we have in it is likely to be a play. I don't think we're going to see them have many prominent roles, and it's just a show. I expect we'll have the likes of Smith and Benn in the shadow cabinet soon enough.
Yeah.
But I just be wary, I'd say. I don't think it's going to be a united party with Starmer in power at all.
Oh, yeah, there might also be like Yvette Cooper. And another thing I think we should also need to consider is what positions the left are going to have. So far, we've got, like, Nandy's got one of the top jobs, but we don't know what job Rebecca Long Bailey is going to have, if she is going to have one. Granted, I assume she might end up getting one just because she and Angela Rayner were flatmates, and they ran a joint campaign together. Only one of them got the deputy, so it might be she gets a job just for that. But let's see. We're going to see if she's going to keep a job similar to what she has, or if it's going to be a downgrade. I think that's also what we got to consider.
One thing I just want to say on what you said about Blair and sort of the governance by sofa meetings with Brown, because obviously that was pretty infamous during those days. I know obviously the party structure plays a part in that as well, but also I think given just the sheer size of the majority that Blair had, I think that gave him a certain comfort level as well. There was probably a sense of, well, why listen to the cabinet? If you don't do what I say, I can easily replace you. There's hundreds of MPs waiting to climb that greasy pole that I could just put into the position you were in. I wonder if in opposition it's in opposition obviously with the limited number of MPs Labour has now, it's trickier not to govern with a degree of consensus, and that's where, and you're absolutely right in saying that's where the risk in the right having a great amount of influence comes in, because obviously with governing by consensus, you need all sides to be listened to, don't you? But I don't know. I hope and also expect for the time being that I don't think the party is going to see itself drift back to Blairism or anything too close to that just by virtue of Corbyn and the left no longer being in charge. But certainly it's something that I wouldn't wish to see.
Sorry, I just wanted to elaborate, saying that no, I wasn't implying we're going to move to Blairism like that. I'm saying that this is going to be a long-term drift, I'd imagine. I'm saying that with Starmer in power and all these different press groups and people who will influence and lobbying within his campaign, because let's not pretend lobbying isn't an issue within the Labour Party as well. I think over time we're going to see him move away from the left, and the left will be alienated over time. Sure, now he's pouncing around showing off the 2017 manifesto, but realistically, I don't think we're going to retain that by the time we get to an election or get to even winning an election. But sorry, go on. I'll be quiet now.
That's fine. I was going to follow up, but Cameron. Yeah, go on, Cameron.
Before I said, I think that Overton went actually towards left in general. I don't know. The Conservatives are moving in the left direction as well. So I don't think they'll move that right wing. I think Annalise does actually suggest that we'll probably keep most of the 2017 manifesto. So I don't think they can worry about that too much. I think the right are actually the ones that are trying to compromise. That's why they're so positive at Starmer.
One final thing. Sorry, Cameron, didn't mean to interrupt.
I'll just say this thing. I think it's the left of the party that's going to be undermining the party more than the right at the moment. I think people like Resh Street, quite passionate about Starmer. A lot of people who left the party or said are we joining it because it's not Corbyn. So I think the world moving to rightward direction. I think the rightward direction might actually be social conservatism rather than on economics. I think the right are actually going to bite the teeth because it's not Corbyn, and they want the Corbynites back in. So I think Starmer. I think there must be much more compromise in the party by everyone. Eventually, I think that will be the case.
We've got our host back now anyway, so I'll chuck it back over to you. Are you with us? Hello.
It's Chris. I'll tell you something. I was listening a little bit while I was on the phone earlier, and you host this show way better than I do, mate. Honestly, you really need to take over this shit, man. Seriously.
I've had a few years of practice,
You have. You're definitely a hit on me. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation. I'm not sure if this area, just before we move on, because I know we've.
Before you move on, I'm just going to head off now because I've got something to do now. So, yeah. One thing I
good
do
know. Anyway, good to hear your voice, and we'll see you soon, John. Sorry. Yeah.
One thing I do want to happen during the Kier Starmer years to see if they change the voting system from first past to either something in PR like STV or something like that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you want to talk about that or not, but anyway, I'll be heading off now. Bye for now.
You take care, John. See you soon.
See you later.
See ya. Yeah. Bye. So yeah, I mean the final sort of point that I just wanted to move things on. This is something that had been touching me for a while in terms of what happens moving forward. I want success for the Labour Party, whoever sort of leads it, and whoever the shadow cabinet are. The only thing for me, everybody who knows me, whether it's here online or whether it's personally, knows that I was a great Corbynite. I was a fan of his. I was a fan of his ideology and his sort of way of doing things and his honesty and integrity. But I think one area of his massive area of weakness was that he was a very nice guy and he wasn't a disciplinarian. He allowed, if you look at even Keir Starmer himself, he resigned actually as part of the coup. And then he brought him back into the shadow cabinet. Now that wouldn't happen with another party. If you crossed somebody in the way that he had, there wouldn't be so much forgiveness. Look at what Boris Johnson's, for example, done with the purge towards the end of the last administration, coming into the sort of post-election administration. One thing I want to sort of get from you guys, your sort of opinion on, and obviously the comments of the viewers, is Keir Starmer going to close rank here? Now, I can certainly see from the sort of left wing, certainly the ones who are going to lose their roles, their prominent roles in the cabinet, that I think that they will probably fall into place and back the party. And that's the sort of good thing about that wing of the party, I hope, anyway. But if they don't, or if there's some mutiny, if there's a similar, there won't be a purge because the numbers certainly aren't there. The socialist wing of the party is a lot smaller than the centre or right of the party. But what I want to know is Keir Starmer going to be a disciplinarian, almost a disciplinarian that Corbyn wasn't? He didn't get rid of people. He didn't purge people. It was all sort of kindness and holding hands kind of things, which I think was partly the reason to his downfall as well. He allowed himself to be attacked. Is Keir Starmer going to allow this purge? And the second point I want to make, guys, sorry, I didn't mean to swear. I'm like this, right? The second point I want to make is when these media attacks do happen, and they will happen, because if Labour makes any success with Keir Starmer as leader, the purge from the media is going to come back. I want to know that is Keir Starmer going to defend himself and his party, or is he going to allow, just like the issue of anti-Semitism took over and almost infected the parliamentary or the sort of the Labour Party as a whole? What's your view on that, guys? Swiss, let's start with you.
Okay, then. As far as a media reaction, that's an interesting one. Because obviously, under the Corbyn era, we pretty much, I don't know, with the exception of maybe the Mirror, and occasionally the Guardian, depending who was writing and what side of the bed they woke up on. Very occasionally. You did have an overly hostile media, but I guess it helps for us not to think of the media as just one homogenous group. But obviously, you've got a conservative media, you've got a liberal media, you've got different bits of media and outlooks that depending on who it is they're talking about, they'll have a different approach. So like just on the other side of it, obviously Corbyn, pretty much nearly everyone against him. But if you remember over the summer last year in the leadership contest, you did have quite a few people gunning for Johnson. Now obviously it wasn't the typical conservative backing media, newspapers, etc., but the likes of the Independent, the Guardian, the Mirror. I personally, I'd argue the BBC, but maybe that one's up for contention. But the point is, from that perspective, certainly, whilst the liberal media, we'll call it, whilst the liberal media didn't like Corbyn for various reasons, they likewise also didn't like Boris Johnson. So as far as who's going to be coming after Keir Starmer, I think that the heat will be off a little bit less, that you'll still probably get the right-wing conservative type media coming after him because he's a Labour leader and that's what they do. But there's a possibility, I think, that you'll probably end up getting the slightly more centristy, liberally outlets probably being a fair bit more sympathetic towards Starmer than they were towards Corbyn. So I think Starmer will probably have less of a challenge from the bulk of the media at large than Corbyn had. As far as how he's going to respond to the things that come up, I don't know. The proof will have to be in the pudding on that one. We'll have to see how he handles his first major few things that are thrown at him. But I think overall he's probably going to face a slightly less hostile media than the previous leader.
Okay. Okay, and on the subjects of obviously discipline within the party.
Well, obviously, the number of MPs that Labour has at the moment, it's not going to be their first preference to boot someone out and risk a by-election, especially. I mean, we wouldn't have any under coronavirus anyway, but with the Tories at 50-odd% in the polls, it's probably not the thing that they want right at this moment in time. Yeah. But yeah, I think they'll probably allow room for criticism, but they'll probably clamp down pretty harshly on I don't know, any kind of attempts to mount coups or whatever. But to be honest, I don't think there's significant enough numbers of MPs in the party who would get together to try and oust Starmer anyway, not in the same way we saw against Corbyn. So again, I don't think exactly that same kind of issue is going to end up coming up.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah. Guys, what about yourselves? What are you saying on that? Just on a final point on before we move on to coronavirus in our last 10 minutes, just very quickly, anyone?
I mean, in terms of discipline, it is almost a question of will he be kind of like Blair, who ran the party top down, ran a sofa government, kind of took his ministers aside and made sure that he was constantly in control of anything. Or if you look at Corbyn's approach, a kind of bottom-up, members-led party where the grassroots would kind of pass the major policy up. So there's almost kind of two ends to it. He might, again, try and strike some way in the middle. You know, be a leader. Don't allow people to kind of encroach on your ground like Corbyn did. Don't be so defensive that you're letting other people create their narrative, but at the same time being quite harsh and being quite firm, because that's what a leader needs to do. And I think on defending himself, yes, he's going to get attacks from media as a head of public prosecutions. There's a lot of scope for them to do that. But I think if you've seen Starmer at the dispatch box, he's extremely forensic. He is able to defend himself, and as a lawyer, he doesn't really take kindly to people suggesting that he has done anything wrong. And I've seen him in Parliament standing up and making his case, and actually it's quite convincing. And I think his first campaign video was also quite honest, convincing. And so, yeah, in terms of discipline, we'll have to wait and see which side he takes. But I think he's fully capable of defending himself. He's got a mandate from the left and the right of the party. And I think if he starts disrespecting the left wing of the party and drifting towards the right, as Tom suggested earlier, there's still the membership base for them to challenge. But at this point, we've got a new team and a new leadership. So hopefully we can just see where it goes. Okay.
No, fair point. Fair point. No, I think Guy, you seem convinced overall with Kier, and I hope your optimism. I'm not sharing it at this moment in time. Jury's still out for me personally, but no, you make some absolutely convincing, valid points. Do you think we've laboured the Kier Starmer thing a bit, guys? Should we move on a little bit to the last 10 minutes to talk a little bit about COVID-19 and the sort of pandemic that has overtaken us at the moment? Is it a good time to move on? I think, unless anyone else, anything final to say on Kier Starmer?
I just wanted to finally say that I do agree massively that he will have a lot easier a time with the media, in the sense that the Guardian and the Independent seem to be welcoming him with open arms at the moment, and the Mirror don't seem to be taking to him too harshly, so he'll have an easier time. However, you're saying, will he be a disciplinarian leader or not? Hard to tell, in the sense that, as Pav2 in the chat said, Ed Miliband ended up being controlled by the right. And I think that's how it will go with Starmer eventually, but not right away. I don't think he's all that strong a leader. He doesn't seem to be, out there. And he's not as, say, weak leader as Corbyn was made out to be. But I don't think he's going to be this really strong leader. However, with lots of people who will be influencing him and pushing him in certain directions, it depends. If he ends up being controlled in the way Miliband is, whether he's a weak leader or not, it will become irrelevant if he's supposed to go that way. I doubt there'll be a purge. That seems incredibly unlikely in every way, shape, or form. But I don't think it's going to be a broad church for long. I don't think the left are going to be content for long. But that's it.
Just very quickly, sorry. I was just going to take this as a chance to head off. I'd said I probably wasn't going to be here for too long today, but once we got you back, I thought that would be a good enough time anyway.
Swiss, it's been brilliant to have you on as always, and thank you for part hosting as well. You've probably increased my subscribers and viewers through your cameo appearance, so appreciate that. And listen, thanks very much. I'd be, I think all of us would love to get on some of your streams as well in the next few sort of days, weeks coming, because I think we're going to be spending a lot of time at home, not doing much, are we really, other than obviously those that work from home and what have you. So get us on if possible.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to have you. The one I did a stream earlier today. We started off with, I think, a room that could have 6 people at maximum, and we had 7 of us vying for it. So very quickly, it just descended into chaos, and we ended up with about 2 or 3. So I'm heavily booked at the moment, but I am going to be rotating people in. So definitely, if you guys want to come on at some point, you're more than welcome.
Good stuff. Good stuff. It's good to hear that your streams are doing well, Swiss, and I'm certainly tuning in as and when. So look, thanks for being with us, Swiss, and we'll see you on the next one, mate. All right.
Nice one. Thanks very much.
Good stuff. Good stuff. It's a shame Swiss is gone, because I've heard some of his I don't know if you guys have been catching up with some of his streams regarding COVID-19 and the government's response. Some really interesting points made by him and some of his co-streamers. I mean, Cameron, let's go back to you. What's happening? What's your sort of understanding on the government's handling of COVID-19? We've got about sort of 7-8 more minutes of the stream left. So, what would you say is your personal view on this?
At the moment, I don't think they can do much more other than help people out of work.
Yeah.
It's hard to see what they can do more. Other
Seem to have lost Cameron.
Cameron there? He's on mute on my screen. It says mute. Okay, Guy, what about yourself? And just while we're waiting for Cameron to come back, do you want to just continue where Cameron left off?
I mean, look, it can be said by some people that it's quite cruel to criticize anyone in these circumstances. I don't think any politician signed up to be kind of handling such a horrible, terrible situation for the country and for the world. But to make, if I make a political analysis on it, it is interesting how every 10 years capitalist societies have to be bailed out by mass state intervention. We saw it under the financial crash, and we're seeing it now that the government is actually implementing a lot of measures that they said they weren't capable of. There's a lot of money that they said they didn't have. For example, with a click of a finger, homelessness is being ended because they're putting people up in hostels, and they're actually, giving them a chance to get back on their feet before they get in to work. So on that respect, it is interesting to see kind of some of the contradictions that are produced from this, and obviously Jeremy Corbyn's claim to have kind of won the argument on this, that actually we can spend more money and get an investment back, and we did have the funds to go for some of these radical policies, and the Tories are going out of his playbook in a way. But yeah, it's hard to completely make political points on this because it's such a terrible disaster, but I just hope we get through it and see what happens from there.
I'm back, by the way. I have to go and do something.
Sorry, I was on mute there for a second. Sorry. So yeah, Cameron, you're back. Yeah, I think what Guy had just done is filled in your absence. But carry on.
I know. I was just saying. I think the government didn't know how to react to it. They didn't know how to deal with it. They were heavy on the chief scientific advisor and probably Dominic Cummings. I think the original strategy of immunity, they realised that can kill a lot of people to move towards a situation where the country would stay at home. But to be honest, I think even with the Labour government doing something different, I don't think things will change too much.
Yeah.
I think it's a situation where everyone has to work together.
Fair enough. Tom, what about you? Go on. Sorry, Cameron, you were finishing.
So, I'll just say, even if we go for whole lockdown, people will still be outside.
Yeah,
and that's a problem. And they're still going out now.
We've got a comment here. We've got a comment here, Cam. Short-term economic relief, also known as socialism, can only occur in a national crisis, my friend. Otherwise, the economy would not last. What do you say to that, Cam? We look at history and we look at the sort of responses to the world wars and how socialist economic policies were used to sort of repair society and move forward. I think that's what my friend here on the Beats Box Dre Beats is saying, that actually socialist policies should only be used in certain situations akin to what we're in. Do you agree with him, or would you take my view maybe as, look, this is a little bit of a full hog we're going, given the consideration of the crises at the moment, but actually a more sort of watered down version of this, so there's a more fairer society is possible?
Well, I think that's a bit of a Keynesian view where we invest in crises. But I will say it depends how you define socialism. And it depends on what economic policy you do. I think we should have a mixed economy. And I think that's the best way to go. To have a strong welfare state.
Yeah.
And thus have a government that will invest in people.
Okay.
And I think that's the way to go. I think the way to go is a mixed economy.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. And Tom, I mean, we just got another 2 or 3 minutes on this. Maybe you can have the final word.
Yeah. Sorry.
I was just going to say that I wanted to just touch a little bit about. I know Cam had just alluded to it about people staying in and people not sort of abiding by what's being asked. Do you think that we're taking a little bit too much of a relaxed approach compared to some other countries where the lockdown's a little bit more, let's say, stronger?
Well, of course, I'm not a fan of Tories. I'm always quick to criticise them. But to be fair, nobody expected this pandemic, and you can't blame them for a slow response. As of course, it came out of thin air. We can argue that austerity has put us in a horrendous position to tackle a crisis because NHS couldn't cope in ordinary times. And of course, it also goes to show the illogical approach of austerity in the first place, considering when late-stage capitalism, incredibly volatile political environment, and you're cutting the budget, and austerity, it's short-term economic relief. It's very unstable. This is the issue. It provides instability within an economy and within a state's response to any form of crisis. So it's very irresponsible, if anything. The issue with a crisis is that he was saying that somebody you just showed their comment now was saying short-term economic relief, aka socialism, can only cure a national crisis. That's not socialism. Socialism is free from any form of a market society. These Keynesian economic policies the government have adopted is far from socialism. The man was a liberal. This is watered down social democracy. But anyway, the point is he's got a point, in the sense that we're saying that Jeremy Corbyn was right. I think that's pretty, desperate, in the sense that, no, we're in a crisis. And the thing about a crisis is what we need to remember. Like in World War II. In World War II, what happened to the economy? It massively increased. GDP increased. Why? Because productivity increased, demand increases, and supply hence increases. Now we're all staying at home. We're still reliant on food delivery service. And of course, hospitals are even more reliant on the manufacturing sector. And the thing about a crisis is that it provides demand. And demand, of course, obviously trickles down, and then you get a financial crisis in 2008. But in a crisis and the likes of war as well, demand is always on the increase. And you usually find that this will sustain an economy for a while. And when, of course, the crisis is over, everything comes crashing down. The government will no longer be subsidizing certain companies. It will no longer be able to afford such forms of welfare. And everything will crash at once. People will suddenly find it a lot poorer. Supply will inevitably decrease, meaning you have inflation in the cost of goods. And inevitably, you will find that then demand will then increase, which will bring you down to a complete economic standstill. So we could argue that these policies the government has adopted now, they're not sustainable at all, because you look at the toll it's taken on the national deficit. But what's interesting is after this crisis, we will find our national deficit will be back to square one in 2009. and austerity is no longer an option. That would be total suicide. Not even the Tories will opt for austerity as a recovery strategy. So I'm curious to see what they will do, because they won't be in a position to spend. They won't be in a position to adopt any Keynes approach, and they won't be in a position to cut budgets. So it's kind of very dangerous. We will see a drastic increase in poverty, I expect. You talk about the government's response being slow, and it differs from other countries. And I agree. We should have went on lockdown earlier, but the risk about lockdown is that, of course, people will start to get bored. People will go out. People will not realize how severe the disease is until it's literally on their doorstep, and they start seeing members of their families and friends dying, and which is what we're trying to avoid. Absolutely. And that's obviously the issue. But one last thing I'd like to touch on is that the thing about austerity is that, of course, if you're not spending you're cutting the budget in the public sector. More people are unemployed, wages lowered, and of course, one man's spending is another man's income. If there's less spending from the government, there's less spending in the public, and if there's less spending from the public, there's a lack. GDP is dragged across the floor, which is why we're in such a horrible position where we are today. And this is the horrible reality we're going to be in after this crisis is over, is that austerity won't be an option. Keynes won't be an option. And we're going to need a whole new economic strategy thought up by Rishi Sunak. God, it just gets worse all the time. So I'm really curious to see how it goes. But I just want to say that person had a point in saying this short-term economic relief is just that. It is short-term. It cannot last. And the policies Corbyn hoped to adopt back in December would be impossible to adopt even if Labour were in government at this very point in time. I think we would be, ultimately, he hasn't won the argument. No, not yet, he hasn't.
Let's see what happens after, though, to see whether that argument is won or not.
Well, no, they won't be in a position to spend. This is the issue. We won't be in a position to spend. The thing about the national deficit being so high is the government will be forced to sell off its assets unless the national deficit is, and hence the debt is lowered. So I honestly, not even Labour could wiggle us out of this situation as well as we propose. He's won the argument for austerity. Austerity was the wrong choice. He's spot on there. But our investment plans would have been doable without this crisis. But with this, no chance.
Good stuff. All right, listen, Tom, that was absolutely brilliant. Agree with some of those points, and some of those points, as you say, in the future to be seen. Nathaniel James in the comments finally says, here they go, blame Boris for Corona when it's China's fault. No country could deal with this. And I think to our panel, I think that's an unfair comment, because I think we've actually been, or the panel has certainly been, quite fair and understanding that actually whichever government was in place would struggle. Tom, sorry, Guy, finally, I know there's something that you want to quick. I know we've only got 2 minutes, though. I did want to finish a lot sooner than this. So I just want to sort of end with your point. I know you asked for a little slot on this. So if you could take the mic.
Yeah, I'd be happy to do it on another stream just to get a couple more points in about the lockdown, just so we have a bit more comfortable with time.
Should we do it next time then? We can maybe arrange a midweek one, and then maybe you can start with your point, and we can take from there, because I do want to give it diligence, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah, that would be brilliant to kind of start off with it.
Just remind me, though, before we jump on next time. You know how forgetful I am, guys, so you're going to need to remind me. Guys, listen, I want to thank each and every one of you. Least of all, we've got to, sort of say thank you to Captain Swiss for joining us as well. I know he just was on the stream earlier as well, so thank him for coming on and co-hosting as well. And to Cooperman, who had to leave earlier as well. Cam, Tom, Guy, thanks very much for coming on. Let's stay in touch now and get more regular on these streams. And thank you to everybody who watched today and for all of your comments. Even the slightly rude ones, but slap on the wrist for you there, guys. Guys, you take care of yourselves, and we'll definitely touch base soon. Okay?
Sounds good.
Take care, guys. Good night.
See ya.
Goodbye.
Bye.